Welcome to our comprehensive exploration of the Hindu Succession Act, 1956. This landmark legislation governs the inheritance and succession of property among Hindus in India. Over the years, the act has undergone significant amendments, most notably in 2005, which brought about crucial changes to gender equality and property rights. In this video, we'll break down the key provisions, definitions, and rules that shape how property is inherited, ensuring you understand both the historical context and the modern implications. Let's begin by setting the stage for why this act matters and how it impacts families across generations. Hindu Succession Act was notably amended in 2005, marking a pivotal shift in property rights for daughters. Prior to this amendment, only male members were considered coparceners in Midikshara joint family property. The 2005 amendment abolished gender discrimination, granting daughters equal rights as sons. This means daughters can now inherit, own, and dispose of their share in ancestral property. Sections 23 and 24, which previously discriminated against women, were omitted, further strengthening gender equality. These changes align the Act with constitutional principles of equality under Articles 14 and 15. Understanding the terms agnate and cognate is essential. An agnate is someone related by blood or adoption but wholly through males. Cognates, on the other hand, are related by blood or adoption but not wholly through males. Both agnates and cognates can be male or female, and their relationship may be in ascending or descending lines. For example, a father or grandfather is an agnate, while a sister's son or mother's brother's son is a cognate. These definitions help determine the order of succession when direct heirs are absent. Act defines an heir as any person, male or female, who succeeds to the property of an intestate under this act. An intestate is someone who dies without making a will for their property. The distinction is crucial. Heirs have an immediate right to inherit, while reversioners only had a chance under previous laws. The Act covers both testamentary by will and intestate succession, ensuring clarity in how property is distributed when a person passes away without a will. Judiciary Coparcenary property refers to ancestral property held jointly by family members. Before the 2005 amendment, only male members were coparceners. Now daughters are coparceners by birth, with equal rights and liabilities as sons. They can dispose of their share by will, and the principle of survivorship has been abolished. When a coparcener dies, their share is divided as if partition occurred immediately before death, ensuring fair distribution among heirs, including daughter. Section 6 of the Act details how interest in coparcenary property devolves after the 2005 amendment. Daughters are allotted the same share as sons. Shares of predeceased sons or daughters are passed to their surviving children. The Act ensures that property division reflects equality, and any partition or testamentary disposition before December 20, 2004 remains unaffected. The amendment applies to all daughters, regardless of when they were born, reinforcing gender parity. Act introduces a legal fiction. When a coparcener dies, it is assumed that a partition occurred immediately before their death. This ensures that the share of the deceased is calculated fairly, and female heirs receive their rightful portion. Supreme Court cases like Gurupad Kondapamagdam v. Hurubhai Kondapamagdam have affirmed this interpretation, emphasizing the legislative intent to enlarge female heirs' shares. After the 2005 amendment, courts no longer recognize the right to proceed against sons, grandsons, or great-grandsons for debts owed by their father, grandfather, or great-grandfather solely based on the pious obligation under Hindu law. However, debts contracted before the amendment remain enforceable. This change protects heirs from being burdened by ancestral debts and clarifies their financial responsibilities. Section 8 outlines how property of a male Hindu dying intestate is distributed. The order is: first, heirs in Class I of the schedule; second, heirs in Class II; third, agnates; and lastly, cognates. Class I heirs include sons, daughters, widows, and mothers, among others. If no Class I heirs exist, the property passes to Class II relatives, then agnates, and finally cognates. This structured approach ensures clarity and fairness in inheritance. Class I heirs are the primary inheritors when a male Hindu dies intestate. They include the son, daughter, widow, mother, and children of predeceased sons or daughters. These heirs inherit simultaneously and to the exclusion of others. The Act ensures that each heir receives an equal share, reflecting the principle of equality among immediate family members. The Act recognizes adopted sons as equal to natural-born sons in inheritance. A son born after adoption to the adoptive father inherits as if he were a natural-born son. Posthumous sons, those born after the intestate's death, are also considered heirs, ensuring their rights are protected. This inclusive approach reflects the evolving nature of family structures and adoption laws. If a son is born after a partition of joint family property, he takes an interest by birth in the property obtained by the father during partition. The property becomes their coparcenary property, and succession is governed by Section 6 for coparcenary property and Section 8 for separate property. This ensures that new family members are not excluded from inheritance. The Act does not differentiate between divided sons and sons who remain joint with their father, except for undivided interest in coparcenary property. However, illegitimate sons are not entitled to inherit from their father, though they may claim maintenance as minors. This distinction clarifies who qualifies as an heir and who may receive support. Section 16 of the Hindu Marriage Act, 1955, ensures that children born from void or voidable marriages are deemed legitimate and entitled to inherit from their parents. This provision protects the rights of children, regardless of their parents' marital status, and aligns with broader principles of fairness and equality. Stepsons are not entitled to inherit from their stepfather unless adopted. The Act also removes disqualifications based on physical or mental defects, ensuring that all heirs, regardless of health or ability, can inherit property. This reflects a progressive approach to inheritance, removing outdated exclusions. If no Class I heirs exist, property passes to Class II heirs, which include the father, siblings, nephews, nieces, and other extended relatives. The Act specifies the order and manner in which these heirs inherit, ensuring that property remains within the family even when immediate heirs are absent. Daughters, whether married or unmarried, inherit simultaneously with sons, widows, and mothers. Each daughter receives an equal share, and there is no priority based on marital status or chastity. Adopted daughters are also included, reflecting the Act's commitment to gender equality and inclusivity. Illegitimate daughters do not inherit from their father but may inherit from their mother. Mothers, including adoptive mothers, inherit simultaneously with sons, daughters, and widows. Divorce or remarriage does not bar a mother from inheriting, ensuring her rights are protected regardless of marital circumstances. Section 10 provides rules for dividing property among Class I heirs. Widows collectively take one share, surviving sons, daughters, and mothers each take one share, and heirs in the branch of predeceased sons or daughters share one portion. The Act ensures fair and systematic distribution, with detailed illustrations clarifying complex family scenarios. When Class I and II heirs are absent, property passes to Agnates and Cognates. The Act lays out rules of preference. Heirs with fewer degrees of ascent are preferred, followed by those with fewer degrees of descent. If neither can be preferred, they inherit simultaneously. This ensures a logical and fair approach to extended family succession. Degrees of ascent and descent are computed from the intestate to the heir, inclusive of each generation. Every generation constitutes a degree, helping determine the order of succession among Agnates and Cognates. The Act provides clear illustrations to guide families through complex inheritance scenarios. The Act's rules of preference ensure that heirs closest to the intestate inherit first. Among descendants, those with fewer degrees of descent are preferred. Among ascendants, fewer degrees of ascent are favored. Collateral heirs are ranked based on proximity, ensuring the nearest relatives receive priority. The Act provides numerous illustrations to clarify how succession rules apply. For example, among competing collateral agnates or cognates, preference is given to those with fewer degrees of ascent. If degrees are equal, degrees of descent are considered. If neither can be preferred, heirs take simultaneously. These examples help demystify complex inheritance situations. Section 14 establishes that any property possessed by a female Hindu, whether acquired before or after the Act, is held as absolute property. This includes property acquired by inheritance, partition, gift, or purchase. The Act abolishes the concept of limited ownership, empowering women to own and dispose of property fully. Cases like Irama v. Virupana and Jupati Pardha Sarathi v. Pentapati Ramakrishna have affirmed that limited interests acquired by female Hindus become absolute by operation of Section 14. The Supreme Court clarified that possession can be actual or constructive, and the Act's intent is to empower women as full owners, not limited holders. Co-widows become absolute owners of their share, not joint owners. Examples illustrate how widows' limited interests are enlarged to full ownership after partition. The Act ensures that women who previously held property as limited owners now have full rights to inherit, own, and dispose of their share. Once a widow acquires absolute ownership, remarriage does not divest her of property rights. Section 4 gives overriding effect to the Act, ensuring that remarriage after 1956 does not affect inheritance. The Act protects widows' rights regardless of marital changes as long as possession was acquired lawfully. Section 14(2) acts as an exception to absolute ownership. If property is acquired for the first time as a grant with restricted rights, the female Hindu does not become full owner. However, property acquired in lieu of maintenance or partition based on pre-existing rights is not restricted. The Supreme Court has interpreted this exception strictly to preserve women's rights. Section 15 outlines how property of a female Hindu dying intestate is distributed. First, it goes to sons, daughters including children of predeceased heirs, and husband. If no issue exists, property inherited from parents goes to father's heirs, and property from husband or father-in-law goes to husband's heirs. These exceptions ensure property returns to the source family when no direct descendants exist. The Act provides detailed illustrations for female succession. For example, if a woman dies leaving a son, daughter, and husband, all inherit simultaneously. If she dies without issue, property inherited from her father goes to her brother and stepmother. These examples clarify how exceptions operate and ensure fair distribution. Section 16 specifies that heirs in one entry are preferred over those in succeeding entries. If a son or daughter predeceases the intestate, their children inherit their share. Distribution among heirs follows the same rules as if the property belonged to the father, mother, or husband, ensuring consistency and fairness. Section 18 establishes that heirs related by full blood are preferred over those related by half-blood, provided the relationship is otherwise the same. This rule applies to both male and female heirs, ensuring that closer kinship receives priority in inheritance. Section 19 states that heirs succeed per capita equal shares and as tenants in common unless otherwise specified. Exceptions include distribution among branches of predeceased heirs, which follows the per stirps principle. This ensures that property is divided fairly, reflecting both individual and representative claims. Section 20 protects the rights of a child in the womb at the time of the intestate's death. If born alive, the child inherits as if born before the death, and inheritance vests from the date of death. This provision ensures that unborn children are not excluded from their rightful share. Section 21 addresses cases where two people die in uncertain circumstances. The law presumes the younger survived the elder, affecting succession. This presumption ensures clarity in inheritance when the order of death cannot be determined, as illustrated in various legal cases. Section 22 gives heirs in Class I a preferential right to acquire interest in immovable property or business if another heir wishes to transfer their share. If multiple heirs want to acquire, the one offering the highest consideration is preferred. The court determines the price if parties cannot agree, safeguarding co-heirs' interests. Section 23, which previously governed special provisions for dwelling houses, was omitted by the 2005 amendment. This removal further aligns the Act with gender equality, ensuring no discriminatory rules apply to women regarding residence and property. Section 24, which disqualified certain widows from inheriting upon remarriage, has been omitted. Remarriage is no longer a disqualification, ensuring widows retain their inheritance rights regardless of marital status. This change reflects the Act's commitment to fairness and equality. Section 25 disqualifies anyone who commits or abets murder from inheriting the property of the victim. The law applies broadly, including culpable homicide, and ensures that succession does not benefit those responsible for the death of the intestate. Section 26 states that children born to a Hindu after conversion to another religion and their descendants are disqualified from inheriting property from Hindu relatives unless they are Hindus when succession opens. However, the convert themselves is not disqualified, ensuring a nuanced approach to religious conversion and inheritance. Section 27 clarifies that if an heir is disqualified, property devolves as if they had died before the intestate. No person can claim inheritance through a disqualified heir, ensuring that succession remains fair and unaffected by disqualification. Section 28 ensures that no person is disqualified from inheriting property due to disease, defect, or deformity. The Act removes outdated exclusions, affirming that all heirs, regardless of health, are entitled to their share. This progressive stance reflects modern values of inclusivity. Section 29 states that if no qualified heirs exist, property devolves on the government, subject to all obligations and liabilities. Escheat is rare, as most property owners make wills or have remote kin. This provision ensures that property is not left ownerless and is managed responsibly. Section 30 allows any Hindu male or female to dispose of property by will or testamentary disposition. The Act recognizes the right to make a will for all property, including coparcenary interest, aligning with the Indian Succession Act. This empowers individuals to plan their estate and ensures clarity in property distribution. Hindu Succession Act, 1956, with its amendments, has transformed inheritance laws for Hindus in India. By abolishing gender discrimination, empowering female heirs, and clarifying succession rules, the Act ensures fairness and equality. Its provisions reflect modern values and constitutional principles, making inheritance transparent and just for all family members. Understanding these rules helps families navigate property succession confidently and ensures that rights are protected for generations to come.